Funnily enough, this is the show that popularised the Dick Grayson-Slade Wilson ship. Disturbingly, because Dick is a child in this version, but also disappointingly because due to the way the characters were named in this show, it means the ship will be forever known as Slidden. Which is a shame because I was really rooting for Dick Stroke.
Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Okay, we're going to need a little background for this one because I did not in fact see this show as a child, and that surprised me because when I was younger, me and my brother were obsessed with Cartoon Network. It would be the first thing we watched in the morning, it would be the first thing we watched when we got home from school. We watched all their famous shows, so when I eventually got to college and all my friends were talking about their favourite childhood TV programmes, this one kept coming up, and I was confused as to why I had never heard of it before. But in Britain, when I was a child, if you wanted more than 5 channels, you had basically 2 options. You could purchase Sky TV,
or you knew a guy.
My parents had Sky TV when I was a young child, but I remember there was a period in the early 2000s when they couldn't afford it for a couple of years, so that must have been that when this show was airing and it just missed me. And all my friends were saying, oh, it's brilliant, it got me into comics, it's a really great superhero show, one of the best. And I thought, well, that's definitely worth checking out. Now, when it comes to deciding whether a show is worth my time, I have a 3-episode rule. If the show hasn't got me by its 3rd episode, I stop watching. I don't hang around and say, oh, maybe it'll get better, maybe, I just want to see what happens, maybe. No. It had its chance. Now, if the show hasn't quite got me, but I still see potential in it, I'll extend that to 5 episodes. After that, no more chances. So, I purchased the first season on DVD, sat down to watch it, and
The Teen Titans, or the Teen Titans,
was not impressed. I thought it was a perfectly serviceable children's show. It was colourful and fun and a great gateway show to get kids into superheroes, but I was still confused as to why people were holding this up as one of the greats. One of the most brilliant superhero shows, when in my opinion, there are so many out there that trump this one to the power of 10. So I went back to my friends and they said, oh, I know the first couple episodes are a little bit rocky, but it really is good. Just persist with it. So on their recommendation, I used my extension rule and watched the next 2 episodes. And not only did I still not get why people loved this show so much, but I was now seeing things about it that actively annoyed me. So I popped the DVD away and thought, that's it. It's not for me, doesn't matter. Then that happened. And as the internet often does, it lost its mind. Many people, my friends included, hated this show. They didn't just hate it, they were hurt by it. They thought, oh, this brilliant piece of superhero media that got me into comics, its name is being besmirched by this garbage, and I, again, did not understand. So on this one occasion, I decided to just throw out my rulebook and go on the assumption that this is one of those rare occasions where writers take longer than is reasonable to find their feet with a new show, and I will just give this another chance. So I watched the first season, first episode to last episode, and those problems that I found when I watched the first 5 episodes practically doubled when I watched the entire season. And I know people would be thinking, well, if you haven't watched the entire show, what are you doing talking about it? And to that I say, no. I gave this show over 4 hours of my life and it still failed to grab me. And I happen to believe that if you stop watching a show, that can be an indicator of quality in and of itself. So that means that I do in fact have things to say about it. So I just want you all to be aware that when I'm talking about this show, I'm only talking about the first season, and from clips I've seen on YouTube and what people tell me, the things that bother me don't go away. So if you want to tell me that things get better, please do, but don't use it as a rebuttal for the things that bothered me in season 1. because like I said, this show had more than a chance to impress me and it just did not do it. But for all of you that loved the show, when writing this, I did come to an understanding of why. So I do have good things to say about it, so please stick around. I promise this isn't just going to be an entire video bashing a show you loved as a child. Now, I can't tell you how many times I wrote and rewrote this because it was really hard to articulate why this show doesn't work, because it wasn't a few big problems or even a bunch of little ones that just popped up and went away. No, these were problems that are baked into the show's DNA. So in order to get a better perspective, I filmed myself reacting to every episode of the first season. That was very revealing. So I thought the best way to show you how bad the series is was to pick the episode that I thought was the most indicative of these problems, show you my reaction, and afterwards go into them in greater detail in relation to the season as a whole. Enjoy!
The Hive Academy for Extraordinary Young People is proud to...
Here is the first big problem, but we'll get to it.
Jinx, the enchanting sorceress, whose powerful hexes mean bad luck for her enemies.
Seriously, I don't get it. What, you shoot luck lasers out of your eyes? It's hard to picture, and certainly not very cinematic.
No, it's not all that cinematic. And yes, she does just shoot luck lasers.
Well, Mr. Slade?
Slade.
However, robots and obstacle courses only prove so much.
Okay, pause here for a second because I really want to give props to this voice actor. He just gives this chilling performance. His voice is just, it's very intimidating. That I want this guy to read me a bedtime story.
How could you lose the remote?
What makes you so sure I lost it?
'Cause you're you?
Hey, just because I lost that video game.
Here for a second because this is one of the things that really bothered me about the whole style of Teen Titans. You'll notice that there are lines coming out of Beast Boy's mouth to suggest that he is speaking harshly. Anyone who watches anime will recognize this, but the reason it's there is cultural, because Japanese people put a lot of emotion and emphasis into the way they speak. Take this clip, for example. An English person would have just told their co-workers to be quiet, but the actual literal words for be quiet in Japanese would be incredibly rude to say, because in Japan you don't tell people to do anything unless you're in a serious position of authority. So instead, you use softer words but a harsher tone. And that happens quite a lot. To avoid saying rude words, speaking Japanese, you have to put an emotion into your voice to make someone understand what you're saying. And animation is meant to be an exaggeration of how people act and talk, like how Disney movies are an exaggeration of how we act and talk and think. So the reason you will see those lines in anime is just to inform the audience that this character might not mean literally what he's saying. You have to read the emotion to get the exact context of what they're trying to get across. And so anyone who has watched an anime dub will notice that even if the dub is synced up perfectly and translated fairly well, there is always some kind of disconnect between the animation and what you're hearing, because the English language is kind of incompatible with that manner of speech. So in certain situations where a Japanese person would animate their speech, an English person wouldn't. And that's why that disconnect exists. So, language lesson over, I promise. But the reason that bugs me so much is because this didn't need to be there. It's not a quirk. It's an unavoidable translation problem. And they didn't only use actual anime quirks wrong, they put in an unfixable problem into a show that didn't need to have it because it was made for an English-speaking audience. Anyway, back to the reaction.
Are you pit sniffers normally this stupid?
This character is an indication of another huge problem in this show.
That was too easy. What a bunch of kludge heads. You guys want to get pizza?
Excuse me, other 45-year-old writer, how are the kids insulting each other these days?
Pit sniffers, kludge heads. Dude! You just much and sit, you snot-eating losers!
Okay, tense battle. The Titans are getting defeated by the enemy and they're closing in on... I no longer care.
What do you think? We got kicked out of our house, a pint-sized Poindexter took me for a joyride, and in case you haven't noticed, I just became left-handed.
Yeah, maybe I would be feeling more for your predicament if a giant T didn't spit you out like you were a Looney Tunes character.
The Teen Titans are finished?
Not yet.
Not if I can help it. Does she have anything that's not blue?
Okay, seriously, she is wearing black and purple. Wouldn't it make more sense for her to go into Starfire's wardrobe and be disgusted with it? You know what? That's a nitpick. Doesn't matter.
Crud. Snot. Oh, mega crud. Snot.
Go away.
Sorry to interrupt the victory celebration, but like I said, this isn't over.
It's just getting started.
Okay, why are the Hives suddenly incompetent? No, seriously, there is absolutely no reason for them to be losing this fight right now, especially since they've already beaten the Teen Titans twice, and nothing has changed between those two battles. The only reason I bring that up is because I don't really want to dive too deeply into the tactical nothing that is a lot of the fight scenes in this show. Not all of them, I mean, some of them are actually gorgeous, like absolutely beautiful, but there are a lot of them that you just think, why? Why are you winning? Why are you losing? He punched me. Once. No, I'm down. I'm down. And just run away. Just don't try to fight. Just run away. Oh, okay. Okay. That works too.
I'm calling Slade.
Who is Slade?
Wouldn't you like to know, barf brain?
Right, once again, I just want to give props to how creepy Slade is in this one. I mean,
Who is Slade? Who is Slade? Who is Slade? Who is Slade? Who is Slade?
Stalker alert.
now anyone that fancies some clarification, grab a cup of tea and make yourself comfortable because we're going to be here for a while. And I suppose we should start with my favourite topic, character. So let's begin with the one that they done dirtied the most, Dick Grayson.
I'm Robin. Care to test that theory?
No, they threw aside the whole idea of secret identities, and I'll get to that, but there's a huge problem with that notion. They seem to have been going with just a generic Robin character. He has Jason's anger, Tim's stoicism and micromanagement, and a bit of Dick's empathy, which wouldn't be such an issue if they hadn't confirmed that this is, in fact, Dick Grayson. And it's not. Dick Grayson. The character has often been described as the heart of the DC universe, the only hero other than Superman that every other superhero trusts completely, is an angry, angst-ridden, stoic mini Batman who doesn't trust his friends.
Slade did not trust you, and you did not trust us.
Dick Grayson. Dick. Motherfucking Grayson. The charming, empathetic, lovable dork who loves the spotlight, spouts puns, is always there to offer a shoulder to cry on, who has no qualms about seeking out a shoulder to cry on, who has Big Brother stamped across his forehead, who makes the goddamned Batman smile, doesn't trust anyone, not even his friends. Yes, Dick does have comics where he displays these tendencies, but they're often shown to be the inverse of his natural character. Whenever Batman does something untrusting or untrustworthy, it's shown to be the natural way he handles people. It's usually justified verbally by Batman, rebuked by another character, and left up to the audience to decide if he was wrong to do it. When Dick starts acting like Bruce, it's usually in moments of desperation or, more depressingly, when Batman tells him to do something dickish. Or in this context, undickish. Young Justice makes this mistake too, and is probably even worse than Teen Titans because it never shows Dick acknowledging that what he did was a mistake and contemplating how he's turning into Bruce, the exact thing he doesn't want to become. I'm sorry, I could get into how I hate this characterization all day, but do want to say something positive about the show because there are things about it I legitimately liked. I said Dick doesn't want to become Bruce, and that's one thing I can really credit this show for putting a good spin on, because Bruce isn't here. Slade is. And Slade can be seen as a dark mirror of Batman. What if Batman didn't have such a rigid moral code? So the thing Robin is afraid of becoming in this series is Slade, and that was exceptionally well done. These two characters work off each other brilliantly, and Ron Perlman's voice for Slade was very intimidating. They also used him just enough to make sure he is a looming presence in the series, but not so much that his menace was diminished. So serious points for that. His plans, on the other hand, well, if you think about them for more than a minute, they're pretty fucking dumb. Okay, what are his main objectives? He wants to make Robin his apprentice, and I swear, I have watched this season around 3 times and I still don't know what his ultimate goal is. He just seems to steal weapons and use them against the Titans. It looks like he has an organization at his disposal, unless these guys are all robots, but he doesn't really do anything with them other than mess with the Titans. What did he do in the first season again? He wastes time and resources hiring this hive team to, in his words, deliver a message, when his regular criminal activity plus a calling card would have worked just as well. Disguising himself as an old guy to trick these deities into creating a fire creature again to get Robin's attention, infects the Titans with nanobots that could kill them easily and chooses not to do that because he wants to blackmail Robin into becoming his apprentice. He wants an apprentice to work for him and eventually take over his criminal empire, so I have to question the long-term sustainability of this. Maybe his ego was enough to convince him that he could break Robin's spirit enough that he would stay on his own after a while, but that is all thrown out the window when, in the end, he just decides to kill them anyway. Robin does this, and Slade's response is this. Slade, if you kill his friends, you are going to lose him anyway. Who cares if he's dead? These kids are a major threat to your operation, and you have just doubled their motivation to come after you. Just kill them and get yourself a new apprentice. Which he does in the next season. So yeah, Slade's motivation makes no sense. I get that he's obsessed with Robin, and that does make him a legitimately threatening character. I'm not taking back what I said about how effective his mere presence in the show is. But he really does nothing to convince Robin to join him other than saying,
You and I are so very much alike.
oh yeah, and the cliches. I waited and waited for an episode where this character didn't speak purely in cliches.
Your time is running out. Disappointing, Robin. Looking for this, but you do lack patience. You'll have to do better than that. I expected a little more from you. You will see things my way. We really do think alike. Next time, my plans will succeed.
But we'll talk about all the problems with his manipulation techniques when we get to Teen Titans Go. The rest of the villains are either forgettable, annoying, or
Crud. Snot. Mega crud. Snot.
go away. The other characters are okay. Cyborg is fine, and my problems with Beast Boy are mostly surrounding the humour in the show. Raven and Starfire are actually pretty great. Now, while Starfire is my favourite character in the show, I think Raven is the best one because we really get to see her emotional struggle, and she seems like the one of the group who has the most to overcome. I also love the way she talks and her dry humour.
I respect that you don't eat meat. Please respect that I don't eat fake meat.
Starfire was a particularly good creation because in the comics, well, she had some interesting arcs, but she herself was just kind of meh. Her character was pretty much, I love Dick Grayson, I'm mad at Dick Grayson, I'm sad about marrying someone who's not Dick Grayson. So giving her these very unique personality quirks that they used just often enough to make her endearing without being annoying was an inspired piece of writing. It was much appreciated after reading the New 52 where she was back to being meh. But my biggest problem with this show is the humour, mainly because it constantly interrupts the drama.
You know, just because we're trying to catch Slade doesn't mean you have to act like him.
He's trying to destroy the city. I'm trying to save it.
The pilot episode was a good example of this. Robin and Cyborg have a big blowout fight, but it's shown in such a comedic way that I don't take any of it seriously. So when later in the episode the show asks us to take it seriously, I am past caring. But I suppose the bigger sin was to expect us to care about the breakup of a friendship we, as of yet, have no knowledge of. But the biggest offender, and the best example of this in my opinion, is the Apprentice arc. Just to reiterate, the main villain, and best thing about the show Slade, blackmails Robin into becoming his apprentice after sticking lethal nanobots into his friends' bodies. The moment on the roof after the Titans catch their friends stealing for Slade is great, and the fight later on in the episode is very tense, so you really get a sense of how much these people just don't want to hurt each other. The exchange between Starfire and Robin is especially good. It really made me want to start caring about these character relationships and how this whole scenario must be affecting them. But in the middle of those two scenes, we had this.
Disgruntled radioactive clone.
And we're supposed to laugh? Guys, your friend, your leader, someone you care deeply about is working for your greatest enemy and none of you are reacting the way people would. Beast Boy is in full tinfoil hat mode, Raven kicks him across the room, her and Cyborg seem uncomfortably willing to accept that okay, our friend's a criminal now and we have to take him down when they know Slade is a master manipulator. Starfire seems to be the only one having a human reaction, and she is the only character that is not in any way human. That is a big problem. There are emotional scenes that are well done in this show, and it is good how they give the people on the team episodes dedicated to how they relate to the other members of the group, but with how often the humour interrupted genuinely well written and emotional moments, it just sucked out all of my willingness to care. It's like sinking into a warm bath and then all of a sudden having cold water thrown on you. It's going to be a real challenge to get yourself to relax again. Now, the humour was my biggest problem with the show, as it the thing that annoyed me the most, but I think the aspect of Teen Titans that is honestly the worst is the overuse of anime quirks. This is the thing that drained my enthusiasm for the series pretty early on. It feels to me like the creator wanted his show to look and feel like anime without actually understanding how anime works. I do feel a little like I have a cheek for saying that since the creator is more than likely of Japanese heritage, but he is still an American, so I'm going to say it anyway. It's like he tried to get every quirk you see in an anime into every episode. What do you mean we can't fit the chibi into this episode? Just stick it where the characters are having an argument. You know, the one that breaks up the group. No, I'm sure it won't make it silly instead of emotional. They're just losing a friend after all. There is no reason for the characters to be chibi here other than they want to grab your kid's attention, and people with big heads and tiny bodies is the anime way to do that, right? Avatar is an example of a show that knew exactly how to use the style of anime. Remember my rant about exaggerated expressions being there due to how Japanese people communicate being incompatible with natural-sounding English? Well, Avatar gets around that problem by not doing that. If you look at these shows back to back, you will notice that the only time these outrageous expressions are used is for comedic purposes, and also they are used sparingly. Teen Titans, on the other hand, want so badly to be anime that they use every aspect of the genre even when they shouldn't. It's like wanting to hang with the cool kids and copying everything they do, but at times when it's wholly inappropriate to do so. Also, the use of lines to convey action is a common technique in anime that's used to get around drawing backgrounds. It is so overused, though to be fair, it is used less and less as the season goes on, and I suppose that can be blamed on budget more than anything else. There is a good moment in my favourite episode, episode 6, where Raven is meditating and all of a sudden she bursts into laughter, and the exaggeration works because this moment is meant to come out of nowhere. It's meant to look out of place because this isn't how Raven normally acts. Once again, I want to make it clear that this show is not all bad. For everything they do wrong, there is a counterexample for when they do it right. Okay, on to story, and this is the section where I have the most positive comments to make. Now, there are some good ones in there. I'm going to forgo talking about episode 1 because there isn't much to say about it that I haven't already said, other than it is a bad pilot that makes you feel as though you've skipped to episode 5. Episode 2 I liked. I much prefer Blackfire's characterization in the comics because she was unfairly hated and ridiculed by her people, and despite being the oldest, her titles, birthrights, and dignities were all given to Starfire. So she has a legitimate, if unfair, reason to hate her sister other than just being a bitch. Though she is still a massive bitch in the comics. But I do admit that the episode she appears in is simple but sweet. It showcases Starfire's character very well and makes her one of the most endearing parts of any kids show I've ever seen. Also, has anyone considered that Tamarinians learn languages through kissing, and Blackfire's English is pretty good, so she must have done her fair share of kissing, mustn't she? Anyway, this episode is a good story and a nice message about friendship. That, sadly, is not true for all of them. Episode 4, I think, is probably the worst, and since you already heard how I feel about episode 3, I'll just jump straight to that. Now, I hate pranks. I think they're mean and not my idea of fun at all. But if both prankster and victim are in on the joke, then it becomes friends just teasing each other. This is exactly why this episode doesn't work. Beast Boy never meant to prank Starfire. He was trying to prank Cyborg, and her acting like he has done something horrible to her when it was an accident, and then comparing him to the villains of the episode who are legitimately hurting people is so dumb, it's almost insulting. Episode 5 is very good as it shows a lot about Cyborg's character and does legitimately have some atmosphere to it. Seriously, this felt like a horror movie at points. It was honestly very tense. I also think it was sweet that Cyborg is this kid's hero because he has a prosthetic hand. This one, I think, has the best lesson for young viewers about taking what others consider a disability and looking at it as a way that makes you special. But, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Stop, you're losing me. You're losing me. Once again, the humour interrupts the drama. I know this is a kid's show, but there is a way to integrate humour with serious situations and darker themes. This is not the way. Episode 6. I think this is the only one I would say I had no problems with. Remember how I said that Raven was the best character? Well, that is on full display here. There is some incredibly creative writing involved in creating and escaping Raven's mirror world. The entire episode functions as a very effective character exploration, and it's the only one in the entirety of the season that I was interested in from beginning to end. I also liked Robin in this episode because they show that he's very in tune with and sensitive to his friend's feelings, as he instinctively knows that Raven just wants to be left alone. So some of Dick Grayson's empathy is on display here. Not enough to rescue the character in my eyes, but it was nice to see. I don't have so much to say about the next 4 episodes. Some are good, some are bad, but they all contain the problems I've already talked about, so I'll just make quick-fire comments from this point forward. Episode 7. It's good. Not much to say, switching bodies has been done to death, but they do manage to get a pretty decent story out of it happening to people whose emotional ranges are so different and tied to their powers. The regular complaints I had were less in this episode, but still present. Episode 8. Again, story not so bad, simple but interesting. Most of my dislike of this episode comes from Robin, which I explained in the character section. But I do have a slight complaint about the ending. Robin dressed up as Red Hood in order to trap Slade, but didn't tell his friends, and their reaction, or more specifically Starfire's reaction, really bugged me. Yes, they have every right to be pissed that he kept it from them, but Starfire says,
Whoever Slade is, you and he are similar. Slade did not trust you, and you did not trust us.
when I don't think that's necessarily true.
I needed to fool Slade. If you guys knew it was me under that mask, you would have held back.
This to me, while not being right, makes perfect sense. It wasn't that he didn't trust them with the information, it was just for the plan to work, they had to go all out in fighting him, and they couldn't have done that if they knew he was their friend. So saying that this was a betrayal of trust would make more sense, but saying that Robin didn't trust them just didn't match up with his motivations. Episode 9 ruined the streak of decent episodes, as there is this contrived rivalry between Beast Boy, who for some reason doesn't want to work with Aqualad because he's jealous? Okay. They established his insecurity about being good enough at the start of the episode, but to use your language, dude, they were making fun of you for being an arrogant asshole, not for not being good enough. And episode 10 was just, what? This is one I genuinely don't know what to say about. It looked to me like an idea for a Teen Titans Go episode that somehow ended up in the script for a Teen Titans episode. It's just off the wall nuts, and you either embrace the madness or you turn off your TV. And with that segue, since I've already talked about the Apprentice arc, I think we should just move straight to... Now, you know why Teen Titans doesn't work for me, so you might be wondering why Teen Titans Go does. I think it's funny.
There was something about Starfire that made him nuts. Not the kind of nuts that put a knot in your stomach or made you want to climb a mountaintop to shout out your feelings. No, the nuts that made you hear voices in your head. Voices like mine.
No, you don't need to come down. It's just a scratch.
Not the best thing ever, and certainly not something one should binge watch, since a lot of the show's jokes are pretty samey, but considering they have a
Very aggressive schedule.
and the show takes up the majority of Cartoon Network's runtime, yeah, funny. Now, you've seen me complain about storyline and characters and a whole myriad of things that are arguably worse in Teen Titans Go than in Teen Titans. How can I explain this? Anyone who's seen my Young Justice video know that I love it when I can sum up my point using a single clip, and thanks to the Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans movie, I can do just that.
You're like a silly little joke man, like me, except worse, because you're trying to be serious. You're just failing at it.
And there it is. Teen Titans Go is exactly what it was designed to be, and doesn't try to be anything else.
This is who we are!
The characters are not like the comic, it doesn't matter. The storylines aren't constructed like a proper superhero show, it doesn't matter. The humour doesn't land? Okay, that does matter. Because yes, this show is very hit and miss with individual episodes, but as a whole, it works for me because it's a parody. It's a parody of superhero shows, it's a parody of the original Teen Titans show, it's even a parody of itself on occasion. Though I will admit the fondness I have for the show was mostly won by the movies, which are far superior. Now, another reason I love Teen Titans Go, which is also the reason I know a lot of you hate it, is because it pokes fun at many things that I thought were stupid about the Teen Titans show.
Is that the best you can do?
I hope none none of you have perplexed looks on your faces right now, because I watched this episode for the third time with a friend when I was preparing to write this, and this moment popped up and I let out a huge snort of laughter, and she looked at me like, "What?" And I said, if you don't see the ridiculousness of someone wearing a mask under their mask, then I'm sorry, you are just beyond helping. I know the writers really wanted to avoid the whole secret identities thing, which means it belies reason when you call him by his actual name. But you show that they do actually have faces under those masks and therefore do have secret identities, which makes them wearing these stupid things everywhere all the stupider, and it just makes me laugh.
You trying to be serious. You're just failing at it.
There were 100 other ways you could have done this. You could have Robin find his pin and then later show Slade throwing the costume away instead of having what looks like an armoured helmet under what is meant to be a super realistic facial prosthetic. That made watching this all the sweeter.
Slade, didn't you get really sweaty under there?
It gets stupid sweaty, and I've had a bunch of rashes. Anyway, it doesn't matter!
You'll notice that one of the things I bitched about earlier on was Slade's ridiculous and ineffective psychological games. Well, it made my heart sore when Teen Titans Go to the Movies condensed it down to... And is it me, or is the Go version of Slade much more competent at manipulating Robin? He isolates his ego and his need for attention and gives him exactly what he wants in order to trap him. That is how you manipulate somebody, you incompetent, idiotic creep. You don't give them more reasons to hate you, you make yourself look like the most attractive prospect or something that is just too good to resist. I also like this version of Slade because despite the world domination plans, he seems to be back to just being a really skilled mercenary rather than a mastermind. That's not a problem with Teen Titans, it's just I never pictured Slade as a standing in the dark monologuing kind of villain, more like a sitting in the dark flipping his knife kind of villain. And in the context of this goofy universe, Slade's plan is far more well thought out and effective than whatever Slade was doing in Teen Titans. Seriously, why are you even here? Another thing I was impressed with when watching the movie was the fact that Teen Titans Go is not designed to have any real stakes or a serious villain, so I was shocked that Slade actually managed to be a real threatening presence.
The Justice League will stop you. Sorry, my pathetic friend, but the Justice League won't be coming.
Once again, in the context of this goofy universe.
Because they're watching a movie, and as considerate moviegoers, I'm sure they would have turned off their mobile devices. Unlike some people.
I completely understand why people might not like this show. Whether you think the humour is too juvenile, which is a good point, whether you think it's too cynical or it has bad morals is fine too. I even think it's perfectly okay to have bad feelings about it because it came off the heels of something you loved. I myself am particularly clear about the fact that I don't like this Dick Grayson because I like this Dick Grayson. So disliking or even hating the show is perfectly okay, even healthy, because differences of opinion help us grow creatively and as people. But saying that it's the worst thing to ever exist or just claiming that it's devoid of any merit is just plain wrong. I think the original Teen Titans is tone-deaf, misguided, and way overhyped, but I can still see the value in it. I can appreciate the good character building moments, the decent story ideas, and while I don't think the animation is all that great in style or execution, I can still see that a lot of effort and passion went into it, and it shows. Anyone who appreciates absurdist humour or is just glad to see someone dressing down superhero tropes, then there is enjoyment to be had here. Me? I'm just fascinated by a show that has this little fucks to give.
Hey! Stop antagonizing the audience!
I love the irony of the lessons in this show.
I'm sorry, Titans. I thought you would be able to make your own decisions. I was wrong for believing in you.
We all make mistakes.
Even though I'm shocked that they let them get away with it because the show was meant for children. Although, come to think of it, I don't really believe this show was made for children. I think Cartoon Network sees the value in marketing it to children, but I honestly don't think it's made for anyone. The noise and the bright colours keep kids entertained, but I think the humour and more importantly the lessons are for any adults watching. Superheroes should never kill and take steps to protect lives whenever they can. We are going to have our characters murder each other and put civilians in danger on the regular. Forgiveness is the right thing to do after someone who's wronged you? Yeah, right. You think just because the other series is beloved and this one is reviled, we're going to get cancelled? Oh no, we're going to be here for a long time to come. A superhero team should have care and respect for each other and the people they protect. Oh yeah, anyone who's not seen the show and only has the movies for reference, you might be thinking that despite their selfish and destructive natures, these characters actually like each other and enjoy being on their team. Oh no, these kids barely tolerate each other.
You were never a joke to us.
You are our leader. To diminish you, we would do anything, friend Robin.
This show does hit the reset button after every episode, so how much they care about each other varies from episode to episode, but what remains is them treating each other like garbage. They're really only together because no one else wanted them on their team.
All the good heroes are already on teams. Even I could barely find anyone. These guys are the bottom of the barrel.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
They really just look at superheroes like being celebrities, and maybe it's the cynic in me talking, but I think that is a far more believable reason for a teenager to become a superhero than doing it out of a selfless desire to dedicate one's life to the protection of others.
Ooh, that's a better reason than ours.
If I could say one thing about the Teen Titans Go movie that is a criticism, I would say that it veers a little too far towards conventional for me. The message that they try to push is that it's okay that Teen Titans Go is as silly as it is. But they don't really work it into the narrative correctly, as they are actually a fairly competent team in this movie.
Crystal secure.
Once again, in the context of this goofy universe.
Whoa, what's that over there?
There's nothing there.
Major luck.
They focus a lot on friendship and teamwork and act like it's a big deal when Robin decides to leave his friends to be in a movie, when the show's version of them wouldn't have thought twice about dropping each other like hot potatoes for reasons far less than that.
Okay, guess we need a new Titan.
One that has animal superpowers.
And preferably doesn't drink straight from the milk carton. Ew.
That is something that makes the series incredibly unique. It is in the position where it is able to be as cynical and unconventional as it wants because it's proven to its financiers that no matter how hated it is, it will still make money. But I understand that with a movie you have to be a little more marketable and family friendly. Plus the usual brand of cynicism is good for a 10-minute episode, but for a 90-minute movie? Yeah, that would get kind of exhausting after a while. I found the same problem with watching the show because even though I found it funny, if I watch more than 4 episodes at a time, I would find myself laughing less and less because the humour was tiring me out. So like I said, the show is good in small doses, so put something else on your schedule, Cartoon Network! Now, I know that because this video is about both shows and the first movie, I can't get away with not talking about the Versus movie. They loved it. I don't think it's as good as the theatrical movie, but funnily enough, bringing the two teams together actually fixes the problems that both shows have. Now that the Go team is sharing the screen with them, the OG team are free to be the serious heroes they always should have been without their poor humour interrupting them all the time. And the Go team's insufferableness is diminished by the fact that they're sharing the screen with characters that are framed to be in the right.
Tall Robin is, talking sense to me.
Whereas in their own show, they are the stars, so if they make horrendous decisions, there's no pushback. Them being together also means that the message of the first movie about Teen Titans Go's silliness having a place in the world actually works a lot better. Because when all plans fail, you've just got to do the craziest thing that comes to mind and hope it works.
There's no time to plan. We just gotta go!
It also means that the Go team are free to be their incompetent selves while the OG team get to be badasses.
Look at them. They're doing that thing where they're good at being superheroes.
Oh, I love when they do that. I love when they do that.
Which fixes my point about the first movie being too conventional, which again isn't a problem, just a change. Also, I said that I loved it when Teen Titans Go poked fun at the often ignored stupidity of the original show. Well, that is on full display here. But fans of Teen Titans needn't fear because it manages to balance the jabs with still keeping the characters you love, the kind, heroic, intelligent icons they've always been. One of the jokes is the dramatic nature of heroic responsibility.
This is the price of leadership, the cost of being a hero. Leadership. Hero.
And it takes no prisoners when it comes to theatrical speeches.
Trapped between worlds. The whole team, no, the whole multiverse is counting on me. Wow, seriously? Does he do this every time?
And remember, I was laughing at this, and this.
How do you get your hair to blow in the wind like that? Go away!
So, conclusion. Yes, we got there eventually. Why does the humour work for Teen Titans Go and even works with the same characters in the Versus movie but doesn't work in the original show?
Because you're trying to be serious. You're just failing at it.
I've always thought there's no point in hating something that you had no chance of liking to begin with. If you don't like rom-coms, that's fine, because you know exactly what to expect if you sit down to watch one. You don't go into an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie expecting Hamlet, so there's no point in being disappointed when you get hammy action, hardly any drama, and non-existent acting. I usually only find it necessary to criticise art that had the potential to be something I liked, or failed to be what it was designed to be. Teen Titans had the potential to be something I loved, but kept taking away my interest with its poor use of anime style, its bad humour, and its messed up tone. Teen Titans Go succeeds because it is exactly what it was always meant to be. And if you don't like it, there's nothing to be done because, at its very core, it just doesn't work for you. Okay, I am officially exhausted because this was a hard one to write. But I honestly know how people feel about these two shows and that I'm mostly an outlier on this topic, so I would be very interested to hear what you all think about my comments and my perspective. So I know that I may have a skewed perception of this show, and yes, I do believe my perception is just as skewed as someone who might be viewing this through the lens of nostalgia. Because, after all, this show wasn't designed for people in their 20s, so my experience of reading comic books, watching movies, and living in Japan gives me a very different perspective than the demographic this show was aimed at. So please tell me what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe and consider visiting my Patreon where you can get the chance to become a Nightwing. Not that one. Now, I usually give you all a clue as to what my next video is going to be, but I won't be starting on making any more until well into January, so I can't give you a clue this time. But don't worry, I have more than enough complaining within me to last well into 2020. Bye everyone.